Only in Kentucky can a single county have the undisputed title of Elk Capital of the East and also name a mountain town after a Victorian poem. Hi, I'm Michael, and I'm learning a little bit more about Kentucky. One county at a time, all 120 of them. And today, I'm learning about Knott County. If you haven't done so already, I do hope that you check out the other counties I've covered. They're all listed in the playlist on my profile. If I haven't covered yours yet, I'll get to it soon, I promise. I'm going in mostly alphabetical order. As always, if I do miss something or mispronounce something, feel free to correct me in the comments so that way we can all learn together. Covering about 353 square miles in eastern Kentucky coal fields, Knott County is a place entirely defined by steep, heavily forested Appalachian mountains and narrow, winding creek valleys. There are no massive navigable rivers or wide open plains here. Early travel was dictated entirely by the waterways, specifically the complex network of streams that flow into the North Fork of the Kentucky River. The original hub of the county was a place simply known as the Forks of Troublesome. It was the exact spot where the left fork and the right fork of Troublesome Creek collided. By the early 19th century, pioneer families with names like Cornett and Duke and Hayes began pushing their ways into the deep hollers. They weren't building massive plantation estates, of course, they were setting up farms and building watermills along the creeks just to survive the winters. Because the terrain was so incredibly isolating, the early culture of the area was fiercely clannish. Family loyalty meant absolutely everything, and grudges were not easily forgotten. So when the Civil War tore the nation apart, the men of these remote valleys chose different sides. Some fought for the Union, some fought for the Confederacy. But when the war ended in 1865, those bitter divisions didn't just magically disappear. They all remembered. Their decisions bled directly into local politics. When Knott County was officially formed in 1884, named in honor of sitting Governor James Proctor Knott, the town of Hindman was established right at the Forks of Troublesome to serve as the county seat. Almost immediately, the local elections became a proxy war for old family vendettas. The most infamous rivalry was between Anderson Hayes and Clabe Jones, who had fought on opposite sides during the Civil War. And when Jones defeated Hayes in a local election, the political tension exploded into a full-blown Appalachian feud. It culminated in a terrifying shootout right in the middle of Hindman, with Clabe Jones and his supporters barricaded inside the county jail, while the Hayes faction fired on them from a log house across the street. But out of that rugged frontier violence came a desperate, beautiful push for education. In the summer of 1902, an 80-year-old local man named Solomon Everidge, who was affectionately known as the Granddaddy of Troublesome, walked barefoot for over 20 miles over the mountains to the town of Hazard. He went there specifically to crash a meeting of the Kentucky Federation of Women's Clubs. Uncle Solomon stood up in front of these wealthy, educated women from the bluegrass region and delivered a passionate plea. He told them he had grown up completely blind to the written word, and he begged them to send teachers into his holler so his grandchildren wouldn't have to suffer the same fate. Two incredible women, Catherine Petite and May Stone, answered his call. They traveled to Hindman and set up tents on the hillside and founded the Hindman Settlement School. This school was the very first rural social settlement school in the United States. Solomon even donated 2 acres of his own land to help build the campus. The school didn't only teach reading and writing, though. It provided healthcare and social services to the community that the rest of the world had largely written off. Of course, the early years were incredibly difficult. The main schoolhouse burned to the ground 3 separate times in its first 10 years. But every single time, the teachers and the local families refused to quit. They just kept hauling timber and stone, and they kept rebuilding. Today, the settlement school remains an absolute beacon of progressive learning and cultural preservation in central Appalachia. And just a few miles away, an equally incredible educational movement was taking shape. In 1916, a journalist and publisher named Alice Lloyd arrived in the area from Boston, Massachusetts. The following year, a local man knocked on her door. He told her he had had a dream where 2 women from the outside world came to Caney Creek to teach his children how to read. He offered Alice Lloyd 50 acres of his own land to make that dream become a reality. Alice Lloyd and her colleague June Buchanan accepted the offer and founded the Caney Creek Community Center, which eventually became Caney Junior College. And today, we know it as the Alice Lloyd College, and it operates unlike almost any other school in the nation. It's one of the only recognized work colleges in America. So students from the Appalachian region aren't charged any out-of-pocket tuition. Instead, every single student is required to work a specific number of hours on campus, whether that's serving food in the dining hall, doing maintenance, or working as a janitor. Alice Lloyd built the school on a philosophy that she called Purpose Road. She demanded strict discipline, requiring students to dress professionally on campus to prepare them for the business world. But most importantly, she instilled a fierce sense of duty. In the early days, students actually had to sign a pledge promising that once they got their education, they wouldn't just abandon the mountains for high-paying jobs in the city. They had a promise to stay in the area and serve the Appalachian region. The town that grew up around Alice Lloyd College has one of the most beautiful and unexpected names in Kentucky. A literary group called the Browning Society donated funds to help build the local post office. In return, the town was officially named Pippa Passes, in honor of a verse drama written by the English poet Robert Browning. The poem tells the story of a young, impoverished, innocent girl named Pippa who wanders through her town singing. And without even knowing it, her beautiful voice inspires and fundamentally changes the lives of everyone who hears her. It seemed to be a perfect poetic metaphor for what Alice Lloyd was trying to achieve with the children of the mountains. It's the exact poem that features the famous line, "God's in his heaven, all's right with the world." During the 20th century, the ancient timber was aggressively cleared and the coal companies arrived in full force. Knott County became a massive hub for extraction. While deep underground mining provided thousands of jobs and built the local economy, it was the highly controversial practice of surface mining or strip mining that physically altered the landscape and sparked intense local outrage. The environmental cost of tearing the tops off the mountains brought a national spotlight to Knott County in 1965. A 61-year-old woman named Ollie Combs, known locally as the Widow Combs, had watched coal companies destroy the land around her farm. When the bulldozers finally arrived to strip mine her own property, she didn't just write an angry letter to a politician. She marched up the steep mountain on Thanksgiving Day, no less, and physically laid her body down in the dirt, directly in front of the massive bulldozer blades. She was arrested and dragged off to jail, but a photographer managed to capture the standoff. This image of a proud Appalachian grandmother being hauled away by law enforcement just to protect her home went completely, we'll say, viral at the time. Her incredible act of defiance forced politicians to pay attention and became a major catalyst for the 1977 Federal Surface Mining Control and Reclamation Act. The coal boom also created fascinating, vibrant micro-communities. The most legendary is the town of Vico, which actually straddles the border between Knott and Perry counties. It's named after the initials of the Virginia Iron, Coal, and Coke Company. Vico was a booming, rowdy place during the height of its mining era. The New York Times actually described it as the local coal miners' Vegas, packed with bars and theaters and a wild nightlife scene. But Vico made a very different kind of national history in 2013. With a population of barely over 300 people, this tiny Appalachian coal town became the smallest city in the entire United States to pass a fairness ordinance, officially outlawing discrimination based on sexual orientation. It was a massive progressive statement that challenged every single stereotype that people have about the mountains. Unfortunately, as the coal industry collapsed, the town's economy crumbled with it. Facing severe budget deficits and a complete lack of elected officials willing to take office, the state of Kentucky officially dissolved the city government of Vico in 2025. Knott County is also famous for having some of the most wonderfully quirky and highly specific community names in the country. Because the valleys are so isolated, almost every creek fork had its own distinct identity and post office. So you have the community of Mousy, which was reportedly named after the nickname of a local woman. You have places called Spider, Kite, and Red Fox. There's Wiscoal, named for the Wisconsin Coal Company. Garner, named after the former Vice President of the United States, John Nance Gardner. And there's this deeply literal community of Elm Rock, which got its name because it featured a very large elm tree growing next to a very large rock. Today, the culture of Knott County is a vibrant, fierce celebration of its Appalachian roots. Hyman is an undisputed epicenter of traditional mountain arts. It's home to the Appalachian Arts and Center, which works to preserve and promote the incredible craftsmanship of the region. They also make acoustic guitars, mandolins, and mountain dulcimers. The center also supports local blacksmiths, potters, and quilt makers, ensuring that these generational skills don't just fade away. The literary culture here is equally profound. For decades, the Hyman Settlement School has hosted the Appalachian Writers Workshop, drawing authors and poets from all over the country. The county was also the longtime home of James Still, one of the most important writers in Southern literature. He lived in a century-old log cabin on Dead Mare Branch in a community called Malley, at a place he named Wolf Pen. As far as festivals go, every September the streets of Hyman completely shut down for the annual Gingerbread Festival. Can't imagine the smell of just molasses and baking spices, and also just thousands of people gathering for parades and car shows and traditional bluegrass music. But the biggest draw for outsiders is the incredible outdoor recreation, largely driven by a massive ecological experiment. In the late 1990s and early 2000s, wildlife officials began bringing elk in by trailer and reintroducing them to the reclaimed strip mine lands of eastern Kentucky. The elk thrived on the vast open grasslands created by the mining reclamation. Today, Knott County and the surrounding area boasts a free-ranging herd of nearly 6,000 elk, making it the largest herd east of the Mississippi River. And as such, the county proudly markets itself as the elk capital of the East. This vast, reclaimed wilderness also hosts the famous Knott County Trail Ride. Twice a year, thousands of off-road enthusiasts haul their ATVs, dirt bikes, and horses to the mine-made adventure park. They set up sprawling campgrounds and spend days riding through 60,000 acres of rugged trails, ending the nights with massive outdoor country music concerts. As far as music goes, fans will recognize David Tolliver, the powerhouse singer and songwriter from the duo Halfway to Hazard. Unfortunately, the modern story of Knott County can't be told without talking about the horrific summer of 2022. On July 28th, a catastrophic slow-moving weather system stalled directly over eastern Kentucky, and the steep mountains acted like a funnel, pouring billions of gallons of rainwater straight down into the narrow valleys. It caused the most devastating flash flooding in the region's recorded history. The water moved with the speed and violence of a tidal wave. Homes that had stood on the banks of Troublesome Creek for generations were completely lifted off their foundations and pulverized into splinters. The sheer destruction in Hindman and the surrounding hollers was completely incomprehensible. 22 people in Knott County lost their lives in the dark, rushing water. The historic archives of the Hindman Settlement School were completely inundated with toxic mud threatening to destroy priceless photographs, letters, and historical documents that chronicled the entire history of the region. But in the absolute worst moment imaginable, the true character of Knott County was on full display. Neighbors didn't wait for federal help to arrive. They hopped into flatboat skiffs and rode jet skis through the debris to pull people off their roofs in the pitch black night. In the days and weeks that followed, an army of volunteers descended on the county. They shoveled heavy, toxic mud out of the living rooms. They washed the ruined archival photographs by hand with soft brushes, and they set up a massive supply distribution centers in the local high school parking lots. The county was bruised and broken, but the people completely refused to let it wash away. As Knott County pushes forward today, it faces these same complex challenges shared by much of central Appalachia. The population has dropped from its all-time peak of over 20,000 down to roughly 13,000 today, as younger generations are often forced to leave to find work in bigger cities. And with the coal industry largely gone, the local economy has shifted more towards healthcare, the school systems, and the slow, steady growth of ecotourism. So, that's Knott County. What'd I get wrong this time?